All right, we are on our way to Boston. We have Adam, Brent in the car. Brent, what's the plan for the trip?
We're going to Waltham, Massachusetts. We're going to hit Boston first, have a little fun, and then go out to Waltham and do the Elite Pitching Form Seminar with Mike Reinhold at his place, Champion Sports. They're going to have the other coaches there, Paul Riddick, Lance Wheeler, Dan Lewitt, Mike, and Rich Juno, the King of the Hill. We're going to have some Rhapsody little demonstration. I think they're going to have Modus Sleeve, maybe. Good itinerary. And then the next day we got a 3x-Velocity camp there as well. So we're pretty excited. Pretty excited. Gonna be fun. Boston.
Good stuff. All right. Well, we'll see you guys in Boston, and hope you guys enjoy it.
Yeah, it says Blue Line, but you look, just follow, it's for rental cars. Seriously, it's sending me like all the way like this. That makes no sense.
Get Waze at, man. It'll take you around.
Yeah, you're right. Let's do Waze.
Waze will take you through the hood. That's good. Sometimes the hood's where you need to go.
All right, we made it.
Sweet.
I left my wallet. I left my wallet. On the what floor? Third or fourth?
Okay, so out here, take a right to Mass Ave.
It's in the middle. Checking in.
Last
Where's
name.
You dirty dog.
Thumb down. That's not fair. There we go. Of course, I thought I ordered a big room. I'm gonna look on there and see what I ordered now. I swear I got the big room. This doesn't make any sense.
Oh, we got a pretty dope view of that building though. The Mormon building.
You don't wait up. Let me make sure.
Are you downtown? Are you
That's
staying
Dalton.
downtown? Or are you closer to the suburbs?
What street is this right here? Maybe it's right here.
He doesn't know where he's going. Brent, he's not. He's like a woman with directions. He just doesn't work that way.
What?
He's doing the grind. Look at Brent walking with all his friends.
We're almost there, fellas.
There it is.
Nope. And then we need one more for that guy out there.
But you gotta pay.
You got to park in the Sheridan, but you got to pay per hour.
Park in the Hilton, you gotta pay for it.
You got to park in the Hilton, you got to pay for it. Maybe the Sheridan. You hear me?
are the names? Brent, I have these for you. I don't have to give them to you right now, but I wanted to see these for me at some point. So you remember to do that.
Cool.
But for now, you guys can fill out, if you're a speaker,
Take that for you if you're set with it.
I need you to fill out one of these. Anyone else speaker?
No, they're with me.
Huh, you got the whole crew. There you go, Brent. There you go.
Yeah, I go in for interest and say,
That's pretty dope.
What?
Space-wise, it
Hey, you got your little setup over here.
Big leagues.
setting up the soap up, like 200 of them today.
Nice.
Are you filming?
Sir, I am.
Oh, sweet.
You're on it. The big leaguer.
is this your crew?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Are you filming right now?
I am filming straight away.
This is so
do you
great.
mind? I'm like, I'll just do like snippets and stuff.
You can never tell when a camera's in your face.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I know what you mean.
What's up? Nice to meet you guys. Adam, nice. So Adam, RT,
Steven.
Stevie G.
Yep.
Stevie, that's right. Stevie. That's
Yeah, there you
awesome.
go.
Good.
This is cool, man. We're excited.
Yeah, you guys, thanks for coming.
man.
You guys had some good stuff online last night. I was
Cool,
checking
man.
out your dinner and stuff. It was funny.
Yeah, we were having fun.
Yeah.
Awesome
It was.
fun.
It was a good
fun.
time.
Yeah, it's a good time. What's going on? Yeah, pleasure to meet you. I'm Mike. Yeah, awesome.
Cool, and Rich is all set up.
This dude's tall.
It's the boots.
So
He played back in the day. He's Orioles guy.
No, as a matter of fact, Schilling, I'm trying to get in touch with Schillings up here. I haven't seen him in a while.
I see. I don't even know how much he's around here anymore. To be honest, I don't know
He was
if he
down with us.
He's,
Freaking
yeah.
Hurricane. He did the bullpen, man.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was cool. We went to Houston and then Florida because they got hit. Then we got to Puerto Rico. But he's a dog guy. He
Yeah.
loves the animals.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's cool. You're recording and everything. I like that.
Yeah, so we figured last minute we were gonna record it because everybody kind of started saying, "Hey, I can't make it." You know, it's one of those things. Like I advertised it to everybody, and I'm sure you helped and you
Yeah.
did stuff like that. But
I hope we got
people
somebody.
from all over the place, Utah,
That's nice.
Canada. So
Cool.
everybody's just like, "Hey, you know, we're trying to come," but I feel like it's going to be an impactful
I think it is.
presentation. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
everybody's
I'm
gonna,
excited.
you know, like have the right message. So it's going to be good.
We got some good messengers.
And that was kind of the point, right? I believe in what everybody says. So
Collaboration.
yeah, exactly.
Collaborate.
Everybody. I feel like all of us are somewhat right and somewhat wrong. You know, right?
Yeah.
But like everybody here is
Showing
doing
the
things
mind,
right
yeah,
in my mind.
I'm interested in meeting everybody. I've talked to Paul Riddick, but I haven't spent a lot of time with him. I haven't met Lance Wheeler.
Look at Richie Rich.
Lance is coming a little. I think he's finishing his talks. Like,
he is?
he like texts me from the hotel. He's like, "Can I switch my spot
you
with Dan?"
serious?
You know, so I gotta talk to Dan about that. Blewett somewhere. He's here. Yeah, Blewett's a good dude. Real analytical kind of guy. The way he thinks.
We're
Paul's
excited.
flying in.
Excited, man. It's gonna be fun. Looking forward to it. Yeah, cool.
So you get the demos and all that stuff?
Yeah. Where's he gonna do the demos? Here? Is out there?
These are good questions. You're just gonna chuck med balls in the wall and power clean and do all the good stuff. Nice.
I guess we can just use this space. Where does everybody live? Right there?
So I mean, he's got concrete everywhere. So
Cool. Is this your first time here?
I was here. I visited. I spoke at Sabre seminar in August, so I got to come speak and peek around here. It was cool. It's a lot of it's a different crowd, to say the least.
Northeast, Boston.
Well, I grew up in Baltimore, so not about that, but
Hey, he's
just
a
like
Baltimore guy right here.
the nerdy crowd.
Speaking of Baltimore, there's Gus. He's so he's put it in there. He goes to spring training and walks into every team.
Picked up on that, so I'm not gonna float his ego too much. But when we started using this, there's two things. One kid, massive knee pain for like 3 years, tons of surgeries, and trying to get back. High school senior, like it's my dream. I just got to play senior year. Get him on that thing, and he cannot get that thing to click because he's not driving off his injury, right? Cannot get that thing to click. So we use the thing to give him that feedback, and he eventually gets it. That's pretty impactful, right? Then with our pro guys, we did a test with all our pro guys. We're just like, hey, get on that thing and try to make it not click, and they couldn't. Like they couldn't not make it click.
Oh, because they're such a
They couldn't change their mechanics to not have enough drive.
So you found the correlation.
So I thought it was amazing. So
It is you. It's really you. I like the. Have you talked to Jim Parquet with the Velo Pro?
I have not, no.
I like what he's doing too.
With that
that's a
stuff.
loading concept. So
Yeah.
that's going to force you to load.
It's pretty cool.
And that's teaching you to ride, like interaction.
You got to check out. I don't know where you guys are in the world on this. You can check out Lance's now.
No, I like
Pretty damn awesome.
Well, I was kind of doing that same concept a little bit before he came out with it, but I'm sure he was trying to engineer it as well as I was. Because I can take guys in my camp. It's easier with the med calls.
Right.
Pull them.
Right.
And I can pull their velocities up just like you.
Right. That's, again, it's one of those things. I'm not a pitcher, right? I was clearly a second baseman in high school, right?
You got another one.
So I don't necessarily know, but the pro guys put that thing on and they're like, oh yeah, that feels good.
Have you put it on?
Yes, and I put it on my golf swing. Don't tell Lance. No, I'm talking about the TopVelocity. I'm saying those guys are like, this thing works. When they say that, I'm like, all right, I'm in.
It's a momentum concept.
Right.
And you can increase energy in the system in any way. Momentum, power, you're going to see output.
Look at that. Look at that. Output. Did you get that? Output.
Yes.
That's the micro content right there.
It was like 3 or 4 years ago at one of your camps. Went down there with,
my place. Yeah.
with Jeff.
Told you when we were in the parking lot. I was
Oh
like,
yeah? Yeah, he was like, I was like, that's Justin Verlander.
With Jeff Parquet. He was at that camp too.
Jeff's camp.
Oh, right on, man.
I
Cool,
remember
cool.
now, dude.
Yeah.
Jeff tore it up. He stayed for 4 months and got up to 92.
Yeah.
So now what is he doing now?
He's like a worship leader at a church.
And he still lives there.
Yeah.
He like moved.
Oh, really? Yeah, I remember talking to him because he was talking about like moving down there or something at the time.
So you been?
I just played indie ball this summer. So I was playing with actually Eric.
Filming the camera guy.
He was in that league too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude, my phone is just like that one.
Good ball player. Going good. I pretty good. Like, top out of line. But I was mainly.
Where were you in camp?
I was 86, but so before I went to the camp, I got your program. I was like 82, and then I got to 86.
Well, you're technically a testimonial.
Yeah.
You do an interview?
You can if you want to. Yeah.
That'd be awesome. So you technically went what?
Before I got the program, I was 82, and then I got up to 86, and I went to your camp, and then from your camp, it took me a couple of years, but I ended up touching 91, 90. I was sitting high 80s.
Well, if you ever want to, I'd love to interview you. Tell your story.
Yeah.
A testimonial is an opportunity to tell your story.
Excuse me. So the question is, when I put together this seminar, the question in my mind is why? Like, why are we doing this seminar? Because that's always the first step here. And essentially, in a nutshell, what's on the internet right now, the information that's being thrown at you in terms of how to develop pitching performance right now, is definitely interesting. We're in this odd era of information. It's very easy to get misinformation or poor information from the internet, especially when we see some very exciting videos on Instagram that, maybe things that kids might want to emulate that to me, I get worried about. So the why behind the seminar, which to me is really important, is we want to cut through a little bit of the crap, honestly, on the internet and give you the real information on how to develop pitchers. And I think that's real important. So what I did was I said, what do I want to include in the seminar? What are the main facts that I want to get across to assure that we're developing pitching performance well? And when I say that, by the way, and when everybody says this for the rest of the day, it's not just at the youth level. It's high school, it's collegiate, it's minor league, it's pro ball guys. It's everything. These principles apply to everybody. But when I said this, I said, what do we need to get across to these players and who should come speak? And essentially, I invited these great group of coaches from around the country to come speak at this event because I believe in what they teach. I believe in what they preach. Okay, and it's real important. There's lots of information on the internet right now. The question is, what is the information you should be focusing on and what's going to be the most impactful for you? Most velocity programs stress the arm all year round. And we're going to talk about this towards the end. I'm going to go into the details behind this. But this is super important to realize. Okay, so most velocity programs gain velocity by throwing, which again stresses the arm all year round. We're going to get to the details on that. Performance enhancement can't solely be focused on these programs. That's why today we have presentations on developing more efficient mechanics, developing power in your delivery, learning how to pitch and how to actually get batters out, not just to throw into a net as hard as you can. Right? Those are the things that we need to learn, and those are the things that you're going to get at this seminar. That's why that's there. But I get it. Velocity is important. There are several ways to get velocity, but we're going to use smart ways to get strong. Right? Smart ways to get this. They all have a different risk-reward ratio. We need to understand the science behind this, so that way we can apply this as most effectively as we can. The interesting thing about these programs is popular does not necessarily mean best. Right? So just because a program is the most popular doesn't mean it's the best for you to perform. So again, there's safe ways to do this, and that's really what I'm going to try to develop today, is I'm going to teach you the foundations that you need to develop that. So first, I like to call it a bucket. So let's say this is a bucket of water, and this is your full potential as a pitcher. How do you maximize that bucket? I like to divide it into 4 big chunks. We're going to fill up that bucket with 4 big chunks of things. There's age and maturity, throwing in their mechanics, like a throwing program and good mechanics, arm care, and strength and conditioning. That's what the pros do. The pros fill up their bucket equally between these 4. That makes sense? Right? What does an amateur look like? And I say amateur because I see collegiate guys just as bad as this as a 12-year-old kid. They look like this, right? Especially the kids. They haven't hit full maturity yet, right? They have terrible mechanics. They've never even heard of an arm care program, which still pains me to this day. And they've maybe gone to a strength and conditioning program, maybe. Right? So what do? They Google baseball velocity, and remember that's huge, especially in February. Forget that, marketing-wise. Right? And then they say, all right, I'm going to do this throwing program. So they go straight to just filling their throwing bucket as much as they can without establishing the foundation. So what I want to see all the kids do is I want to see their buckets look like this. If you don't have age and maturity, I want you to develop the other buckets. And to be honest with you, I de-emphasize the throwing program and emphasize mechanics more in those types of people. If you don't do it this way, it's what I like to say, it's like frosting the cake before you bake it. Okay, if you go straight to a velocity program and you're 12, then you've just skipped this whole cake, right? And this is a great cake. Look, there's Kit Kats on top of this. Right? So it's like going straight to the Kit Kats before you bake the cake. Is that red velvet cake? That's a good cake. That's why I put this slide in there. That's an amazing cake. So it's super interesting. I can show you studies that just doing dumbbells and tubing can increase your velocity by almost 4%. 4% just by getting your arm strong. Right? That's 4% is a ton. That's going from 80 to 83 just by doing arm care. Right? So that's super important to consider. You want to go up in velo, I have science that shows what to do. And part of it's arm care. So what do you do here, right? Get manual therapy to maintain your mobility. You can do it yourself with some myofascial stuff. Work with somebody near you to do it. It's super important. Perform a progressive resistance arm care program. You can't pick up 4-pound dumbbells and do that twice a week for 12 weeks. That doesn't make any sense. Would you go into the gym, put 2 plates on a bar and deadlift $135 all winter? No, you'd go up and wait, right? So you have to add a progressive resistance arm care program, and you have to do dynamic stability exercise. What's the risk of doing all this? Low. You're not gonna get injured doing this, right? What's the reward? Very high. All right, so what's our next bucket then? Let's talk about strength. Okay, so a good strength and conditioning program builds a resilient and effective body and delivery. That's important. Again, what's the science? I can show you all the different components of a strength and conditioning program. Plyometric drills with medicine balls, core stability, med balls, total body strength, more core stability, everything increases velocity. Some of them by 14%, 5%, 6%, right? Again, why are we jumping straight to a velocity program where if you just get your legs stronger, you're gonna go up 6%? This is the cake, guys. That's the important part. What do we focus on? What do you have to do? Athleticism. Hip and shoulder separation, lower body strength, core stability, linear and rotational power. That's the fundamental principles of all of our programs. So when you're writing a program report, you are participating in a program, you have to nail those, right? There's tons of programs that don't work on athleticism, they just do aggressive strength training, right? Not the best. There's some that don't work on mobility, again, it's just strength and power, not the best. There's some that focus on the upper body, not the best. There's some that ignore core, not the best, right? You see what I'm saying? There's a right, a wrong, and better. What about weighted balls? Tons of studies show weighted balls increase velocity. Okay, so we'll get that off the table. A good amount of velocity increase has been shown, right? And I'm not talking about like crazy increases like 20% velocity, but around the 4% range, your velocity can go up in a 6-week program with a weighted ball program. We've studied balls ranging from 4 to 17 ounces, right? So if you see a program that's using 2 pounds, 5 pounds, anything like that, we haven't studied that, just so you know that, right? It goes from 4 to 17 ounces and proven to be effective, okay? So both under and overload has been shown to be effective. We have some problems though. Weighted balls appear to be effective, but we don't know why. We don't know if it changes your mechanics. We don't know if it puts more stress on your body. We don't know the short and long-term effects. And more importantly, we don't know the dose. Meaning we don't know how much to do yet. We don't know how often to do it. We don't know how heavy of a ball to use. We don't know how many weeks to do it, right? Well, until now, to a bit. So we just finished a 2-year project with Modus, one of our sponsors here. Ourselves at Champion, we teamed up with Dr. Andrews, Dr. Fleisig from ASMI. We did a 2-year study on a 6-week weighted ball program. What I would call, by the way, conservative, right? Meaning you can buy a program that's way more aggressive off the internet. So we did a 6-week program that essentially did over the 6 weeks, had a gradual ramp up from knee to rocker to run and gun, right? From essentially 2 ounces to 2 pounds. That's what we did with our ball range. So we wanted to go that high because that's what's commonly purchased on the internet, okay? So we did that over 6 weeks. And here's what we found. So we just submitted this for publication. I want to present data like this because it takes years to get this information out into a medical journal. It takes years, right? So we're going to get it back from reviewers that don't understand baseball and have to go back and forth with, why we use certain terminology and stuff like that. So it takes years to get these things published. Here's what we showed. We showed a 4% increase in velocity with weighted balls. But interesting, not everybody went up. If you really break up the data, that's an important thing to do. 80% of the kids in the program went up in velocity though. 12% went down. So keep that in mind. Weighted balls don't work on everybody, right? Numerous reasons, right? Maybe you went through a big growth spurt during that phase, that type of thing. Okay, we use basically high school age kids, by the way, this is high school age, right? So 4% increase. In our control group, because we had a sound method process to make sure that we did a real research project, what we did in our control group, they didn't throw any weighted balls, they just threw normal 5-ounce balls. They did not statistically go up in velocity, but 60% of them did go up, right? So over the course of 6 weeks, maybe you grew an inch, right? You got 6 weeks older, we know that correlates a little bit. So they went up, it wasn't statistically significant, but keep that in mind, 60% went up. We didn't have enough of them to go up. So very interesting right there. So what happened though? Here's the interesting part. So what we did is we looked at arm speed, we looked at mechanics in other studies with Dr. Fleisig, we're from ASMI. We looked at arm strength. None of those things changed, right? So weighted balls do not give you more efficient mechanics. They don't change your mechanics. Your arm speed does not go up, your arm strength does not go up. In fact, our control group that did not perform the weighted balls showed a 14% increase in their shoulder strength, which by the way, I'm super proud of because that means we did our job because you know how much I love arm care. So 14% in our control group. So why do you think 60% of those kids in the control group went up in velocity? That's probably part of it. Think about that. They had 14% increase in their rotator cuff strength. That's awesome. The weighted ball group did not. So you could actually argue that weighted balls inhibit your ability to gain strength. Okay, so doesn't enhance your mechanics, doesn't get arm speed, doesn't get arm strength. So those are like the 3 common reasons you read why weighted balls work. Here's why we think they work. They gained external rotation of the shoulder. What's that? Layback. We already talked, layback correlates to more velocity. Too much layback correlates to injury. That's the problem. We had a 24% injury rate in our weighted ball group. Not cool, right? So as much as I'm proud of the 14% of the control group that increased their rotator cuff strength, I'm equally annoyed by the fact that almost a quarter of guys get injured on weighted ball programs. By the way, this wasn't during the program, during the program, the next season. Control group, no injury. So we had a control group, right? We're not just saying like, well, maybe 25% of every kid gets injured. Nope, not in our control group. So something to keep in mind. So what have we learned with weighted balls? Well, they're effective in increasing velocity. We get that. But the question is, at what cost? Remember, throwing a baseball is bad for you. I love it. Enthusiasm, right? This is weird, right? We keep going back to that. This is really weird for your body. We don't want to go up that much. The injuries we're seeing are alarming. So So I just wanted you to keep in mind with that. Back again 20 years ago when I kind of started this sort of thing, the injuries we see were pretty common. Rotator cuffs, slaps, labels, Tommy Johns, those are like the big injuries, right? Now we're seeing injuries I've never even heard of. We have kids tearing a pec, it still makes no sense to me, on a pitch. Like they throw one pitch and their pec tears off, their lats tear off. Thoracic outlet is like becoming more common than shoulder injuries in my practice now, it's crazy. So we're seeing these alarming injuries. The question is, are we pushing past their physiological limits? Right? But the other thing, and I wanted to bring this up, is the real question is, are we not really taking a break from throwing? So let's talk about this a little bit again. Remember what we talked about. Injured baseball players are 5 times more likely to get injured if you pitch for more than 8 months out of the year. So now, let's extrapolate some of this info. Long toss past 180 is more stressful than the mound, right? Scientifically proven. Weighted ball programs are more stressful than the mound. Scientifically proven. We know these things, right? But they're equal to or more depending on the load you use. So we have that, right? So does your body care if you're pitching off the mound or long tossing or throwing a weighted ball or heck, throwing a water balloon at your little sister? Your body doesn't care what it's doing. It cares about stress and force. So if the forces are equal to or greater than pitching off the mound, we have to include that in this equation. So a good example for us, we had a big meeting with our teams that train here at the farm here with us at Champion, and said, well, what's our fundamental principles that we want to do in terms of developing pitching and stuff like that? And one of the things we said is, well, our pitchers can't pitch more than 8 months out of the year. So one of the first things we said is like, all right, well, our pitchers shouldn't pitch in fall ball then. They should just play the field in fall ball. That's an important one, right? So August off, September off, because you remember, you can throw. You just can't max long toss, weighted balls, right? You see what I mean? You can't do those extra stress things. So August, September, October, November. November, they start playing catch because that's less stressful than the mound. That doesn't count in the 8-month clock. And there's our 4 months. And then in December, you can start a long toss progression, weighted balls if you like, if you choose to do that, getting up towards mounds in January, February to get you ready for your March season. Does that make sense? So that's kind of how we do it. You have to include those in this. So I think we're not taking a break from throwing. Again, it goes back to like, we actually did a great job teaching everybody that throwing a baseball is hard for you and it's stressful on the body and that overuse is the #1 injury. So what we did in the winters, as pitching coaches and as facilities like this, we said, all right, we can't have our kids throwing pens all winter. And I think that's fantastic. We made a great leap. Now we just have to understand that long toss and weighted balls are equally, if not more, stressful, and we have to put that into the equation. Does that make sense? So we still don't know the appropriate dose. That's interesting. So what can we do? Okay, work with the coach on proper mechanics. If you don't, again, you didn't bake your cake before you frosted it. See that again? Does that make sense? You can't really use throwing as your primary velocity program in my mind, especially if you haven't, again, baked your cake. It's such a good cake, I wanted to show it twice. Right? You can't have that as your core component of your program. Right? So maximize your buckets. Put all these buckets in place. You develop velocity, again, through arm care, strength and conditioning, proper throwing mechanics.
Okay. There's obviously something missing when we go right to mechanics, right? It's not going to have everything. It is a great diagnostic tool, but we've got to flip the hood. We have to look under the hood, right? There's a lot more to it, obviously. Now, we could break this down a million different ways. This is kind of a way that I break it down simply to give you an understanding. So I'll look at it, these 3 systems. If I pop the hood, I have the central nervous system. That's the biomechanics, right? That's the brain telling the body how to choreograph the movement. A lot of it is just choreography. I mean, a lot of how the kids learn. They watch these pitchers do it on TV. They just try to mimic and choreograph the movement, right? That's the central nervous system. Obviously, Lance Limpert crushed that, right? He mastered the central nervous system, or basically the software of Tim Lincecum. He told his body to do pretty much the same thing. But did he have the same body? That's the next question, right? Did he have the same body as Tim Lincecum? That's where we go into the muscular system, right? What's the muscular system? That's force production. So, did he have the same body as Tim Lincecum? How would we know today in baseball? How would we know the muscular system of Tim Lincecum basically just watching baseball? It's getting better. StatCast is helping us on this, but we don't have a combine. And, you know, if the MLB had a combine, we better understand how these athletes are built. So I did some research at the time, and I wanted to see athletically what do we know about Tim Lincecum? I found some research he could do a backflip. Okay, so what does that tell you about an athlete if they can do a backflip? Right, probably he's got some power in his legs, right? Probably a 30+ inch vertical jump to be able to jump up and spin around backwards in the air and then land in your feet. Okay, so now we're starting to learn this guy's got some elite leg power. Okay, probably something that Tim Lincecum or Lance Lippert should have worked on, right? He probably should have worked on perfecting the backflip to go with Tim Lincecum's mechanics, right? What else did we know about him? It was cool. I had Barry Zito come down to my facility and train with me for a while. And Barry Zito said Tim would sit on the floor, put his hand under his butt, lift his butt off the ground, tuck his feet under his butt, and go into a backwards handstand. Raise your hand if you know anyone who can do that. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of anyone who can do that. That's obviously an elite movement, right? What does that tell us in that movement? What does he probably have? What are the components of that movement? Like hyper mobility, right? Core stability, joint stability, which typically doesn't come together. Where do you find a guy who has like severe laxity, but then also the ability to stabilize incredibly in that position, right? That's probably why they call him the freak, right? That's something probably Lance Lippert should have worked on, right? Because once again, you're learning more about his muscular system, which is powering the movements that he's telling his body to create, right? So it's not just, hey, Tim Lincecum, when he falls through his hips, he loads into his back leg a little bit, the knee just behind the toes and his chunks upright. Then it's when he gets out of that position, it's not just fire the quad to start extending the leg, it's at what rate of force do I fire the quad, right? At what rate of force does Tim Lincecum fire his quad at before he goes into front foot strike? That's the missing pieces to why there was a 15-mile-an-hour decrease between the two, right? And then on top of that, we can look at the energy systems, meaning ATP. Like, obviously, Tim Lincecum doesn't just hit 95 one time, he's done for the day. He has to also have enough energy to reproduce that elite movement over and over and over again. We have starters 100 times, 100+ times every 5 days. That's obviously another part of the important part of the system. And just simply, that's what we do with 3X pitching. We address those 3 key components, right? We're training the central nervous system through the 3X velocity system, which is our drill-based train, which I think I'm going to get to demonstrate. We train the power of the muscular system through our power training, which is our fusion system. It is Olympic-based, but it's fusion because it's a collection of many different forms of training, strength training, mobility training, power training. And then the anaerobic conditioning, which was the energy system, is also in that conditioning approach. So we feel we address that in an elite level in those 3 components. And we feel that's the best way to basically develop the high velocity pitcher. If not, if we just take like Lance Lippert and go at the biomechanical or the central nervous system, we're probably get the movement of the elite pitcher, but we're not going to get the end result, which is what we're all looking for. So with that mentality, if you start taking that mentality and you start building that perspective, we really believe that the high velocity pitcher is the best athlete in the world. I always say if I got to speak at a huge event of coaches, I would probably start off with that. The high velocity pitcher is the best athlete in the world. Because I want to see how many chuckles I'm going to get. You think I'm going to get some chuckles?
Oh, yeah.
I probably am, right? That's very unconventional to say the high velocity pitcher is probably the best athlete in the world. But I have a pretty good argument. We already know the arm speeds have been recorded up to 7,200 degrees per second. That means the arm goes around almost 21 times in 1 second. That's the fastest human movement ever recorded in the laboratory. So how can we not say that they're the best athlete in the world when the lab says they're the fastest mover in the world? I got a pretty good argument, right? So if I took that guy who has he's got probably the top 15 hardest fastballs right now, Chapman, and I put him up against Usain Bolt, yeah, Usain Bolt might smoke him in a run, but I don't know. We've learned recently, honestly, it was a couple of years ago, that Chapman beat Billy Hamilton in a 100-yard dash. So he might have a chance running with Usain Bolt. He's definitely going to throw harder than him. And I'm sure there's going to be other measurements that we could do with him that might be equally as impressive. The point is, it starts become an argument that actually has some validity, right? You're gonna have less chuckles when you start looking at it this way. We might have the best athlete in the world as far as in someone like Arnold Chapman. So that's the perspective I want my pitchers to have, because then they stop thinking mechanics, the arm, I'm a specialty guy. They start thinking, wow, I've got to perform. I've got to look at my peers as competition across the board, not just throwing or not just performing in the game. So that's the approach that we take, and it's been most effective. That's what I did for myself. I had a lot of success in doing that. I went from the slowest guy in the teams running-wise to the fastest guy in the team. At the same time, I go to become one of the hardest throwers on the team. What does the high-velocity pitcher do different with these two phases compared to the low-velocity pitcher? Mike Ronald talked about it a little bit. Separation, hip-to-shoulder separation. Really, the essence of hip-to-shoulder separation is the ability to separate these two movements. The more you can separate your stride from your throw, the more hip-to-shoulder separation you create. Okay? If we look at Sonny Gray, good representation of an elite pitcher separating these movements. He hits front foot strike, hips are through, arm is just moving into the cock position, shoulders haven't started. We look at the little pitcher, he goes into front foot strike, and he's already into shoulder rotation. Okay? Raise your hand if you've ever caught yourself doing that, the little league pitcher, right? Going into front foot strike, and you're already pulling your glove, throwing the ball. I think every pitcher can relate to that, right? So the ability to separate the phases is really what we're all trying to do as elite athletes. We call it the counter movement. What it does is it gives energy time to come up the system, specifically after front foot strike when we have that 0.1, 0.2 seconds to get rid of it. Okay? And there's a lot more to it than just that. That's why I want to go into some of the science, so we can start seeing it a little bit more detailed. But at the end of the day, this is going to take you off on a tangent. If you just go back to the two-phase delivery, that's truly the essence of what all elite pitchers are trying to do to most efficiently and effectively use their kinetic chain, is they're trying to separate these two phases in the skilled pitching. Okay? So let's look at this is actually a document from ASMI. Ryan talked about ASMI. They took 3 studies looking at correlations between high velocity and low velocity pitchers. This was an excerpt from it that I actually really liked because it supports this two-phase understanding. They said another finding of interest is that early in the pitching motion, the two groups were dissimilar in the timing of their movements, while their later movement timing was much more similar. This implies that early trunk and torso movements are more varied among pitchers than late arm movements. So what are they telling us? You throw like Chapman, you throw like the elite pitcher, you just stride, nothing like him. Right? Your hip and torso is very different from the elite pitcher, more than your late arm movement. So where do we want to coach? Do we want to coach in the arm paths? Or do we want to coach in the early hip and torso movements? Problem is, where do we typically coach? We do typically coach in the arm paths. Let's look at those ground forces. We talked about most ground reaction forces have been created. How do they connect to performance? This study looked at back leg drive, basically posterior push-off shear force, and they found there was a direct correlation of the back leg drive and linear wrist energy hitting the arm. Okay. Direct correlation. When we say correlation, what does that mean? Link, right? Relationship. Okay. A lot of people say correlation doesn't mean causation. I just find that hard to believe in a system that's connected, right? It's hard to say that that leg didn't influence that arm when they're actually connected to each other. Okay? So that's a big thing. When I hear correlation in the pitching delivery, I perk up, specifically around performance. And it's telling us now something that a lot of other approaches don't say the opposite. That back leg drive has no effect on velocity, or in this case, energy going to the hand. But that makes an interesting question. Why would influence energy going to the hand and not velocity? How's that possible? My theory is the back leg drive is the first thing that goes off. There's so many other things we have to do before we release the ball that potentially you could use that energy in different ways. You could generate that energy and then calm your arm down, which would more than likely probably drop your ball speeds. So it's still a good component to have. I love having a lot of energy come up my system. Because if I want to use it, I'm going to use it. If I don't, I'm going to pull off and let my arm not handle so much stress. This one took that study and went a little bit farther and looked in a comparison between, it's funny, what they call elite pitchers. Typically in labs, you don't find people that throw that hard. These are 80-mile-an-hour pitchers on average, to beginner pitchers at 53. But we do see a difference in velocity, which helps. This is the pitching delivery. This is front foot strike. This is pitch release. This is the back leg drive of the beginner and elite. This is the front leg breaking force of the beginner and elite. We can see the elites drive harder and the elites land harder as well. So we do see an increase in force production in this study in the ground forces of both legs. We have another one that said in this study that the braking force was recorded up to 250% of body weight 45 milliseconds just after stride foot contact, direct correlation of braking forces to ball velocity. I also have another one that actually looked at them both, and the same thing. Back leg correlated to linear wrist energy, front leg correlated to ball velocity. So we're seeing the legs play a big part in obviously driving energy up the chain and into the ball. And it really is the essence of my approach. It's the essence of a lower half or kinetic chain ground up approach. This is my favorite, basically, excerpt from a case study to really help you understand how valuable is the lower half. You know, we hear the argument, upper half pitching, lower half pitching. Which one are you gonna pick? Unfortunately, we try to put them together and they don't really go together that well. Meaning trying to be just purely upper body dominant in your throw or being purely lower body dominant in your throw. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to pick, but you don't have to go so far one spectrum to the other. You could have some shades in there, but you do need to understand, like, what is your approach? Are you gonna build that energy up? Or are you just gonna get their front foot strike and figure it out? This study said Kibler and Chandler calculated that a 20% decrease in kinetic energy, remember that's energy coming up the system, a 20% decrease in kinetic energy delivered from the hip and trunk to the arm, you shut down that energy by 20%, that requires a 34% increase of the rotational velocity of the shoulder just to put the same force on the hand. So you shut off your hip energy and your trunk energy by 20%, you almost have to double the energy in the arm just to keep the same force in the ball. Now how valuable is the lower half? Yes, so you have to, like I said, once you know the biomechanics and you see those profiles, there's a component of speed in there. It's like, okay, he got from his back leg drive, once it got to a certain linear angle, he got to front foot strike in this amount of time, and then delayed the trunk, or the hip rotation was at this speed, and then, or the trunk rotation is at this speed. Those are all speed components that I have to build in. If that athlete doesn't have it, I have to build that in. So I'm going to build that in through power training, through speed training. So that's my fusion systems. Yes, so we're out there. We do plyometric speed and agility stuff to help that, because if I have a kid who's just too slow, he's not even close to his measurements, I have to get speed in his body. I have to get his central nervous system accessing or firing that muscle fiber that quick to be able to allow those movements to be created. My 3A drills, my fitness drills, also have position players. Before I do that, just reach through over the king of the hill, appreciate your educate these, right? Alright, so this is going to be this great trainer a long time ago. I said, hey, try it out. I tried it out, and I know it's a good advice. I'm not a big, I guess you can say damn. And you're not feeling the stress in your arm unless you're all arm. If you're really making good throws through your lower half, you don't feel the stress in your arm. You can do these forever. Really what happens is your legs get out. Let's go momentum. So I'm going to load my back leg, I'm going to drive forward and down the same rate. My hips go forward and down the same rate.
the goal is not to drive early, it's trying to create a late drive. Close to your front foot stroke.
Yeah. Whoa, can we film you? Are you alright with that? Yeah. It's funny because the picture of that seminar, right, is like right in eyesight where I look, and I'm always connect, you know. Okay, so that's cool.
Great to see you. Then.
Yeah. Now, let me know if I
see
can
you a little
help
bit.
with anything.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Meet Mike Lindsay. He's got a place in Houston. He's a certified coach in Houston.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay. I'm a little further up. I'm in the hut.
Basically, you're going to be hiring more adjunct professors to teach classes at Duke to help with classes at Duke. Cool. You should come down. Learn from him. Sure. It'd be cool. We'd love to have you down. Awesome experience.